I think cities have a very important role to play in terms of development in the African context, because the cities are the places that people converge to. Apart from the sheer numbers of people there, there is a whole city culture that is developed. There is a whole infrastructure that needs to be developed, but there is also a modus operandi in cities that are motors for large-scale development strategies to be implemented. And so I think there is a great potential in cities, especially because of its population. You know that the African population these days is majority young. More than 50% is under 18. And most of those people converge to the cities to try and find jobs, a better life, a city life. And there is a concentration not only of the youth, but of cultures, enterprises, ways of life that are very specific to cities. So there's great potential there. I think one of the main challenges is the growth of cities and the lack of infrastructure to accommodate the city population. For example, the creation of informal settlements where people don't have basic social services, like sanitation, public health, provision, etc. I think that is a major challenge. Another great challenge is inability to provide employment for the majority of people who come to the cities or live in the cities and need to be employed. So you have large numbers of people not being able to meet their, to make ends meet. Their social obligations, their social role, really. Well, I think the opportunities are here, and in this particular time, Africa has been experiencing economic growth, many African countries, but many African countries also have tremendous wealth in terms of commodities and minerals, and the extractive industries provide opportunities for Africans to invest in their own development. And I think this is the time to make sure that our economic growth is equitable and creates more equity, and it kind of the wealth is spread to the larger population than just staying with a few selected ones, so to speak. I think partnerships are fundamental, and these partnerships should be between government, non-governmental organizations, the private sector, community-based organizations, essentially. Because if we're going to deal with the urbanization problems, or the problems created by urbanization in Africa, we have to make sure that the communities are involved. It has to be a bottom-up process rather than a top-down. So partnership with those involved in those communities is paramount. Well, the idea of the think tank is to help, because what we understand is that we are living in different times. This is a time when we have large populations of young people unemployed, marginalized, and feeling deprived from their, sense of belonging and citizenship and participation, especially political participation. That's why we see a lot of rioting, etc. But at the same time, we are living at a time where the connections between the continent and the rest of the world have never been greater. So we are much more connected through globalization, through trade, through all kinds of exchanges. And also, this is a time of the new technologies of information and communication, the speed through which we know what's going on around the world, and we communicate with each other, and we can do things to link communities, people, networks, etc. And social media especially plays a huge role, in particular among the younger generation. So this is a very special time, but it's also a time when economically many African countries are experiencing growth. So there are opportunities here. And so this think tank is trying to look at all these new developments, this new situation, and trying to establish a new narrative for what does it mean to be a city in Africa. African institutions can play a very important role in influencing the urban agenda, in the sense that they can develop not just a vision of what this urban agenda for Africa should be, through research, through think tank, through debates. And I think here the research is very, very important, because some of the indicators that we use to know exactly what the situation is on the ground are indicators that are not suited to our reality. But on the other hand, there is so much going on in our cities that so far we don't have enough data. Developing data through serious research in various areas is fundamental, and Pan-African institutions should collaborate and should invest to make sure that we have that data. And it is through that data that we will create the better strategies to solve the problem and develop African cities. I think the role of informal practices is paramount, because if we look at what's going on in our cities, when local governments are unable to provide services, the citizens and the dwellers in the informal settlements, even in the formal settlements, they have to fend for themselves. They have to find a way of continuing to live with no sanitation, with no proper transport. In some places it's a little bit better than others, but it is through informal networks, through informality, that our cities thrive. And I think what we need to do is to understand that informality, that modus operandi, that way of living. How do people get by in every day without having what we think it's basic? But the majority of the urban population in this continent lives like that. So it is a big challenge, but people are there. So we need to understand how do they live and how can we improve or help them improve, rather than trying to export new models and try to fit those new models into their daily lives. I suggestion to the African leaders who will be gathering in Johannesburg for Afro-Cities is that we should pay attention to what is going on in our cities and take that as the basis for building up the solutions. I think we have a wealth of resources that come from the communities. The communities are trying to find solutions every day to deal with social services. They're creating support networks, they're creating a series of activities, and we need to understand how people live in an everyday basis and how to build from there rather than bring external models and trying to make them fit in those particular conditions. An African city is a very particular city, and we can build from there and, you know, grow from the ground up rather than the other way around.